From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Carpe that diem.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, a repressed memory that just popped into your head, a photograph that triggered a thought, why the left turn signal you urgently need to get to that gas station restroom is only green for one car at a time. Anything. Tell us about it by calling the Tip-Ster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837 or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. And now here's your host, furiously taking notes on new cases and some weird recipe for meatball lemon gravy pie from the Pioneer Woman, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. You made me laugh when I couldn't say more cowbell correctly. It's all your fault. And no, I don't like meatball lemon meringue. Shut up with that.
Meatball lemon gravy pie.
Oh no!
Isn't this fun? Isn't this? As she smiles.
You're a hater, and I don't know why you're a hater.
I'm not a hater.
You're a hater. Be a celebrator.
No, Ree Drummond scares me.
She's very frightening.
She is.
With her joy.
Yeah.
And her food love. Yeah, she's terrifying.
Well, some of the stuff she makes looks pretty good, but
it does. We've had some good luck with some of her recipes that I've been able to attempt to replicate not very well, but I do it, and producer Mark eats it, and then I cry in the corner because we can't afford a personal chef who would do cooking for me. And you are correct, sir. When you got to go, the lights are green for 1.5, and then the person in front of you is really slow.
It's awful.
It's become much more prevalent in my life because of our master shower remodel, that they had to take out the toilet. So producer Mark and I are sharing a bathroom, and one of us will be filing divorce proceedings pretty soon, I'm guessing.
We're working it out okay.
We are, because we have the powder room downstairs. So one of us will run downstairs and one of us will stay upstairs. And producer Mark believes that separate bathrooms are what keeps a marriage together.
I do. But, we have had to use the same, bathroom up here in a pinch. And I've learned how to, light the candle in there.
Mm-hmm. I put a candle in there for you.
Yes, and I never would do that.
And it's a masculine one. It's called like leaves or something. It's brown.
Yeah, it's very brown. But it doesn't smell brown.
Appropriate for the bathroom, brown candle. Oh, God. I'm just going to make myself throw up. Projectile vomit in my own studio.
You went there and I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. Yeah. It's your fault. I felt like you led me there. So we are making it work, sharing the potty, and it's not for much longer, Tipsters. Not for much longer.
Yeah, we should send a picture of the new shower to the Just the Tipsters Facebook page when it's done.
Yeah, because the one when it went down to studs, and they just had they call it a floating wall. It looks like cement to me, but people were saying, "Oh, that's very Hannibal Lecter or prison chic." So yeah, I'll post. It is a little it's chicken wire and cement. So yeah, I'll put some before and after photos on the Just the Tipsters Facebook page, because you Tipsters are so incredibly kind and supportive, and we just really want to thank you. We've had more reviews and more ratings popping up in the last few weeks, and we're just very grateful. So please remember, you can always email us at jttipsters@gmail.com for any case ideas you want us to cover, anything you want to tell us, decorating tips for the prison chic bathroom, anything like that. Please take the time, if you would not mind, to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts with an S. It's where most people find us, and it's where people who don't know about us find us. And that is a gift you can give to us that we cannot thank you enough for. And you can always call us on our Tip-Ster hotline. That's 832-847-7837 or 832-847-Tip-Ster. So
832-Tip-Ster.
What did I say?
847-Tip-Ster. Oh, don't overdial.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh my God. You know what? Why don't you just fire me?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's easy to make that mistake.
832-Tip-Ster. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, there we go. 832-847-7837. You can always call us there and leave us a voicemail. We would be happy to hear from you. So we have 2 reviews this week I wanted to mention that are adorable and make me giggle. One is from Curious Crime Stopper. I say she. I could be a he. I'm always saying it's a she. I love the title is I love that she covers a lot of old unsolved cases. And this Tip-Ster, Curious Crime Stopper, which I love that username for Apple Podcast. I found this podcast when I was looking for more information on the horribly sad murder of Bill and Peggy Stevenson in Northern Kentucky. I went to high school with Bill and Peggy's granddaughter and remember it happening. I thought of her the other day and was doing research to see if the case had been solved when I stumbled upon the podcast, and now I'm hooked. So thank you so much, Curious Crime Stopper, for getting hooked on us, and I'm sorry that you are still trying to look for answers, because you're right. We're coming up on 10 years this May of Bill and Peggy Stevenson's unsolved homicide, and we need that solved, and there were some tips and inroads made, and I'm not sure how that's going, but we can always hope that something is shaking loose. But if you know anything, you know what to do. And the other review is from KNS524. Now, this one made me laugh until I hurt myself. The title is Give It a Shot, which I think is hilarious, but the review is great. It's just the title made me laugh. It's like crappy medicine, but take it. Take it.
No, what he or she is saying is, because there's a lot of podcasts out there,
I know.
And a lot of people just, I don't want to, just, hey, give this one a shot because you'll get hooked.
Right. That's exactly what they said. It's, I love that Melissa and Mark cover all kinds of cases, and I appreciate you noticing that, sweet reviewer. If you listen, I promise you won't regret it. I have binged almost every episode because I am hooked. So give it a shot. So thank you, KNS524. I am grateful for your review, and thank you for giving us a shot, and thank you for getting hooked. And thank you for noticing we don't just do kind of the same shit every week. We really don't. And I would never have thought of finding myself here when I started this podcast. I thought I would just be reading, solved cases that I found interesting into a microphone and having producer Mark figure out how to make me sound better. But we interview people in law enforcement. We interview private investigators. We interview family members. We do a lot of different things. We cover solved cases, unsolved cases, and missing persons. And I am more and more grateful to the people that pay attention and notice. And I am happy that we're doing what we're doing because it's so different than anything I could have imagined. And with that being said, I cannot read this message that arrived in our Facebook, Just the Tip-Sters group, instant message, because I will cry. And it meant so much to me. And I have become friends with the author, and he is doing some fantastic work. And he submitted a case to us that I have great hopes we will be able to cover. The detective is very on board with coming on to the podcast, and he is hoping to get permission from the missing man's family in Wyoming. It would be our first case from Wyoming, as far as I remember. But I have asked producer Mark to read David's letter to us, or David's note to us, because I can't do it without crying. So, producer Mark, could you read that?
Sure. He writes, "Hey, Melissa, I wanted to thank you and your team." Well, it's just you and me, but it's a good team, I guess. It's mostly Melissa. Anyway, I wanted to thank you and your team for what you're doing every day with every podcast. My sister-in-law first got me hooked on you last summer, and to be honest, it changed me. I started to feel for the victims and families/survivors of the victims. I wanted to help and make a difference. I found a local group, Missing Persons of Wyoming, who in turn helped me contact Missing Persons of Sweetwater County. Most all of the folks are volunteers, just helping spread the word on mostly kids, unfortunately, and passing on credible tips to law enforcement that is already painfully overworked here. It's not much. We don't have the time or broadcasting abilities, but we care. I care, and you've shown how one person caring can make a difference. Thank you again." That is a wonderful note. You're crying, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's cry-worthy. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So apparently I can't even hear it, without crying, let alone read it. So, I couldn't have made it through that reading it. So thank you, producer Mark. And thank you, Tip-Ster David, because you just don't know what that means. When you have an idea to start a podcast, you don't know where it's going to lead you. You think you know, but you really don't. And when people like Tip-Ster David take what you do and level up, you couldn't be more honored or delighted or proud. And Tip-Ster David has spent time looking for this missing man that we are hoping to cover in the next few weeks, his case. And he's been missing since 2018. So the next time you think one person doesn't make a difference, apply what David said to your life and know that you are a beautiful pebble in a pond and your ripples move out. And what you do matters, and what you say matters, and what you feel matters. And we're really immensely grateful to the Tip-Sters. There'd be no us without you. So thank you for not only being here and listening, but getting involved and doing what you do. It's overwhelming, the beauty in that, and we're really grateful. So this is a jam-packed episode, and I'm trying not to spend all of the time up front, but there's way too much to talk about. One thing I wanted to make sure, because it's been a few weeks and I'm trying to get to everything, but January 21st was a preliminary hearing on the Will Sarazon case. And a friend and I went to the San Fernando courthouse to see Daniel Sarazon, hoping to see the testimony from witnesses, including his father, Chuck, because we know Chuck knows more than he is saying. However, due to COVID, we weren't allowed in. So we stood in line, got up early, drove to the courthouse, stood in line, and we're told no friends, no family members, no press. And I'm like, well, who's in the courtroom? And the bailiff said, sometimes not even the defendant. Sometimes they appear via video because of COVID from the jail. And I'm like, okay. So it turned out, blessedly, to only be about 3 or 4 minutes because Daniel's attorney asked for another continuance. Now, Will's wife, Linda, and his sister, Andrea, are on record as saying, no more continuances, please. However, them going on record saying it's been postponed enough doesn't really help.
It's not going to have any effect.
Yeah.
The judge is going to do what the judge is going to do. Because remember how it works is if the judge, let's assume that it goes through trial and Daniel is convicted, part of the appeal will be that the judge did not allow the defense enough time to prepare. So
I'm
the
sure
judge is trying to everything he can, or is it a female judge? I don't know. But
male. It was a judge pro tem.
Okay. So,
not even the real judge
okay,
yet.
all right.
So yeah.
So the judge is just trying not to do
not
anything.
That they're not real judges, but you know what I mean.
Well, right. Well,
not the official judge of his trial.
They're lawyers that are appointed by the court to act as a judge. So they're just trying not to do something that could get overturned later. So
I understand. It's just that, in one way I am okay with it because it's now postponed till March 23rd, and I'm praying that by then California will be a little bit more open and we will be able to see, what we're supposed to be allowed to see, which is a public trial. It's a public civic thing you're allowed to see and hear and be a witness to, and I want to be there with every fiber in my body. So hopefully March will be a better update, but I did want to give you the update on the Will Sarazon case. And producer Mark and I don't really have time for this right now because we're already talking too much, but we really, I think, both enjoyed, and I don't do these sort of reviews because there's phenomenal podcasts that do reviews of true crime documentaries, of books. There's Writers On, I think it's called. They're true crime writers who do reviews of things. I can recommend a lot of podcasts that would be better at this than us. However, producer Mark and I did watch the Night Stalker documentary on Netflix, and we, ironically, I got a text from Detective Hanky that's not his real name, but he offered me as Hanky. Detective Hanky from the LA County Sheriff's Department Homicide Division, which is focused quite heavily in this documentary on these two detectives. One a little more seasoned, one a young upstart who comes up with great fucking ideas. And really, to me, Richard Ramirez is the sideline because he's so awful. I get why people are fascinated because he had no true MO.
Yeah.
Young,
pure
old,
evil, just pure evil.
male, female, kids, elderly. Right. One thing I was fascinated by and had no idea about is that he stayed in the homes like the Golden State Killer and ate. And, I've only heard that about 3 times now, where a murderer comes in, does something terrible, and makes a sandwich or eats leftovers, teeth marks in food. It's very odd. It's an odd behavior.
It is, it's the whole thing about what he did. If you focus on what he did and how he operated, it's absolutely chilling. But Melissa's right. This is really about the detectives and the law enforcement that helped catch him, and the story of the superstar seasoned detective who chooses this young guy to be his partner, who in turn eventually becomes a star himself.
Yeah.
Because of what they do and how they solve the case. It's just
the toll on their lives and their families. And I did not know that Richard Ramirez had attempted to break into a sheriff's deputy's home. Apparently there was an issue with the window, and he couldn't get it open, but his distinctive footprints were outside the window. It's right. I mean, it was like, wow, that would have been interesting to see how that went. If
it could have ended it all right there,
or it could have just been another terrible story about what this monster did. So yeah, it is worth your time. It is somewhat difficult to watch because he's so awful, and what he did was so much more awful than I could have imagined. I did not live in Southern California at the time. Producer Mark did. I have a female friend who lived here during the time, and the Hillside Strangler and Richard Ramirez sort of at the same time was enough she nailed her windows shut.
Yeah, one came right after. It was the Hillside Strangler case had just been solved by this
same
superstar detective,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden it just folded into this Night Stalker case.
Which he had different names because you'll see if you watch this, because law enforcement agencies don't always communicate well. He was called the walk-in murderer because he would just walk into your home. He was the San Fernando Valley murderer. A lot of what he did was in the San Gabriel Valley, and one of these detectives, the younger one, in Carrillo, I think, he is the first one who's like, these are connected. And it takes someone with that who can see the macro and the micro, and to see these cases are connected. And he had to fight. They laughed at him. It was like this young. He said they called him like every name in the book, like this stupid motherfucker.
Oh yeah, they had, I forget what his nickname was, but it was very insulting.
Yeah, and he was right, and he wouldn't give up. That's the thing, he would not give up. And the thing that's so beautiful is the thing that propelled him is that to make his father proud, because he had was kind of a young person on the way to maybe being a not good person, a gang member. He hung out with some shitty people, and his life turned around, and boy did it. And now he's a priceless gem in the crown of Los Angeles as far as I'm concerned, because he, it's amazing. So that's just a short review. If you want to watch it, I can't recommend it enough. At first, the first 2 episodes, I was like, I don't know, it's dragging a little bit, but it really, you figure out the heart and soul is about these. I just didn't want to look at anything Richard Ramirez did. The heart and soul is these detectives and what they did. And that's the important part, I think, that, we remember that.
And then, of course, at the really satisfying part of this whole story is at the end when they tell the public who the guy is, and he's on a bus coming back down from Northern California.
No, from Arizona.
Oh, that's
he
right.
had gone to visit his brother in Arizona and didn't know that he was on the front of every page El Diablo.
Right. And he sees somebody reading a Spanish language paper on the bus, and he gets off and goes into this neighborhood, and everybody recognizes him because his picture is everywhere.
He's so distinctive and creepy, and
and they kick his fucking ass.
Yeah, they beat and he's saying to the cops finally, "Can you please protect me? Yeah, go ahead, take me in. It's me. Take me in and arrest me, but please don't let them hit me with the pipe anymore." Yeah. So it's a heroes from the streets story. It's amazing. It's kind of an amazing.
It's just great.
That
is
the best part. You're right. That's the best part. You're right. So today's case comes to us courtesy of producer Mark. And it's not...
Hi, everybody.
It's not something I would have ever thought. So we lost Cloris Leachman this week, and she was 94 and had a long, beautiful life and was, by every account, an exemplary human being. I have a friend who is an entertainer I knew back in Ohio, and he lives out here now, and he was hired to perform at a kids show at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, where they do a lot of Disney things. And it was outside, and it was a VIP show under a tent, and he was doing what he did, entertaining kids. And a woman, a grandmother, comes up and says, "You were very funny. What's your name?" And he says, "Obadiah." And she says, "You were great." And he said, "Well, thank you. What's your name?" And she was like, "Cloris." And he's like, "I'm an idiot." It was Cloris Leachman.
That's a great story.
Yeah. Cloris Leachman, who was just a grandmother taking her kids to the show, just a regular woman taking her grandkids to a show at El Capitan. That's just one Cloris Leachman story. So I sometimes forget how varied her career is. I mean, she started as a beauty queen. She was Miss Chicago, like in the 40s. And she is beautiful, but what was so great is that she had no problem making herself look like, Frau Blucher and Young Frankenstein.
I hear the horses winnowing or neighing,
Yeah. I mean, she would put a mole with hair on it on her face. And I mean, she was a character actress, but she was beautiful. And one of my favorite roles was one of those people you love to hate. She was this airhead, self-involved sidekick on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, one of her neighbors, Phyllis Lindstrom, and her imaginary, well, not imaginary, you just never saw him, as Lars Lindstrom, and her daughter, Bess, and it was the 70s, and her daughter called her Phyllis as opposed to mom because she's raising this, forward-thinking teenage girl, and she was just this like bubble-headed, selfish character, but I just loved her.
Narcissistic, kind of.
Yeah.
The world revolves around her,
I loved her. And she always wore these crazy-ass 70s clothes. And she got a spinoff. She and Rhoda, Valerie Harper, got spinoffs from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And the conceit of the show is that Phyllis became a sudden widow. Lars, the never-seen Lars Lindstrom, passed away. And she and Bess moved to San Francisco. And the thing I loved probably more than the episodes was the theme song, that they went to great lengths to make it a show tune, and it's phenomenal. But what you need is the visual to see the face she makes at the end. And I will tell you a secret. That face that she makes at the end was such an inspiration to me that when producer Mark and I got married, almost 20 years ago, when our minister said, who was one of my yoga teachers, by the way, who was also an Episcopalian minister, when he said, "Is there anyone here who would object to these two getting married?" I turned and looked at everyone and gave them the Phyllis look.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
It was a showstopper. I mean, it got the hugest laugh.
It did get a big laugh, and the
my.
minister was like, what's happening? He was looking at his notes, and he couldn't see me. And I turned and looked over my right shoulder at everyone in the eyes.
It was the same look.
I dared them to say anything. And people still mention it. People who were at our wedding still mention it. And that was Phyllis. So it is really, in my mind, one of those sterling moments in television, a theme song that's so memorable. So producer Mark has that theme song. Can you play that, producer Mark?
Surrounding up golden gates and we disappear. Phyllis, moving slow warning bells on the cable cars play the gangs all here. Phyllis, who charms the crabs and fishermen's wharf right out of their shell. Who lights the lamps of Chinatown just by walking in view. It sure isn't you.
So just imagine the end of that. Phyllis, it sure isn't you. That beautiful Cloris Leachman face where she turns and looks over her shoulder and like grimaces.
It's great.
It's amazing. And even producer Mark didn't remember that. That was just my favorite part of the show was the theme song. And it's a takeoff on how adorable and upbeat the Mary Tyler Moore
Yep, exactly.
theme song was.
Instead of Mary Tyler Moore walking all over Minneapolis and throwing her hat up in the air, it's Phyllis walking all over San Francisco, and like the lyrics go, who charms the crabs right out of their shell? She's holding up a crab, looking at it like, ooh.
Yeah, it's like she's everyone's like bother. Like she jumps on a streetcar and she's like kicking her foot in the air and acting like Mary Tyler Moore, and the people on the streetcar are like, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's the anti-Mary Tyler Moore, and it was perfection. And there are, we discussed this about The Exorcist, and there are certainly stories about the movie The Poltergeist, about a curse. I don't know that the television show Phyllis was cursed, but it only lasted 2 seasons. And part of it is attributed to the number of deaths. There was an older couple. I can't remember I think they played her older neighbors.
That's right. Yep.
And both of them died suddenly of natural causes. But, the most, big splashy story about someone losing their life, having just done 3 episodes of this new sitcom, is the case of Barbara Colby. And I would never have known if producer Mark hadn't told me. I had no idea, and I didn't know her case is still unsolved.
Well, I didn't know either until I read Cloris Leachman's bio.
Right. So here we are, 35 years later? Or 45 years later? Let's see. I'm sorry, hold on. Yeah, 40, almost 6 years later. July of 1975. And it's a testament to a character actor who you will see her picture and be like, oh, of course I know her. She was on so many shows, and this was in her blood. Acting was in her blood. She was from New Orleans. She was in plays in her high school. She sewed costumes. She moved to New York. She was, acting was something she was so good at that she had a spot on a Mary Tyler Moore episode where Mary went to jail for not revealing her sources. And she's in a cell with a prostitute named Sherry. And it's Barbara Colby. And she's got on a halter, like a crazy mod, orange and pink halter top and, tight fitting weird pants. And, here's Mary in her beige dress and her, business shoes sitting on the bed, hanging bunk bed in her cell, and they're, becoming friends. And the thing that I remember is another episode because of this particular fashion sense. And Mary Tyler Moore had such a gorgeous figure. They loved Barbara Colby so much they brought her back. So Sherry the prostitute gets out of jail in the next episode, and she wants to be a dress designer. And so she gifts Mary a Sherry original. That's what she calls her dresses, to wear to like a big awards banquet.
Oh, let me guess.
If you see the picture, you'll be like, I remember. It's green. To me, it's way more interesting and a bigger precursor to the Elizabeth Hurley dress that was held together with giant gold safety pins. It was green, and it had like a bikini top, and then the bodice was just little strips of cloth. It went to the floor. It was long, and then underneath was a green bikini bottom. So it was hilarious, and Mary is standing there in her living room mortified, and Sherry, Barbara Colby, the Sherry original. I mean, she was that good. So she, then they loved her so much. The MTM production people loved her so much, they offered her this role in Phyllis when there was a spinoff. And she was Phyllis's boss. And even though she was, quite a bit younger than Phyllis, she was so good, and so she had such a wide range of her acting skills. Nobody really didn't buy it that she was so much younger, because she was good at comedy. She was great at drama. I'll tell you that. There's a lovely write-up about her episode on Columbo, which is heartbreaking because she was brutally murdered on Columbo and then brutally murdered in real life. And she was so fascinating. She believed in things we couldn't see. She loved tarot cards and going to psychics, and she practiced yoga. And I'm just going to cover this part of her life so you get an idea of who she is. So she's this 35-year-old beautiful actress. She's had such a fascinating life in her 35 years. She married Bob Levitt, who is the son of Ethel Merman. And they had been married for 6 years, but they were separated at the time, and Bob was in San Francisco. That was one of her home base areas because she was very involved in the ACT, the theater company in San Francisco. She did a lot of plays. And she was teaching acting in Venice. And she and a student, James Kiernan, who ironically had just booked his first television appearance, and it was on Rhoda. So here she is, a series regular. She had just been hired as a series regular on Phyllis. And here's one of her students who had just booked a job on Rhoda. It's just a very interesting piece of information. They leave acting class at about 11:50 p.m. on Thursday, July 25th. And they're walking to their cars in the parking lot. And they're approached. They are shot. And Barbara, it's just terrible. Nothing's taken. They're not robbed. They're not sexually assaulted. It was just terrible. And it continues to be terrible. It has tentacles, which we'll get into. She's shot through the left arm. It goes into her side, into her chest, and punctures her lung. And she dies very quickly. And her companion, James Kiernan, is shot. And the police are called. And he dies at 1:30 at the hospital. But before he succumbs to his injuries, he says, "We don't know who they were. We have never seen them before. It was so random. They didn't take anything." He's able to give them as much information as one can imagine when you've been shot. So here's Barbara on the precipice of a really big career. This is a woman who was, her first television gig was on Columbo, on an episode that is written by Stephen Bochco, directed by Steven Spielberg, and the actor who kills her is Jack Cassidy. I mean, it's this...
Oh, I know that episode.
Yeah. She's a blackmailer Lily the blackmailer, and she's hopelessly in love with Jack Cassidy, who ends up killing her. So she's brutally murdered on her episode of Columbo. It became a launching pad. She became friends with Liv Ullmann and Jack Klugman. Jack Klugman recommended her as a role of a bartender on The Odd Couple. I mean, she really was so beloved and so interesting and different as a human being. It doesn't even matter that she's an actress. She's this really fascinating human being. So here's the weird other part of this bizarre story. 40 minutes before Barbara and James are shot, two couples are coming home from the theater, and a yellow van with 6 youths, is how it's described, approached these couples in front of their home as they were saying goodnight, Mr. and Mrs. Witt. And Mr. Witt, here's something I'm going to say. If someone comes at you, and we don't know that it would have changed anything, but if someone comes at you and wants your wallet, give it to them. Please, just give it to them. We can replace anything in your wallet. Anything. But we can't replace you. And Mr. Witt found out the hard way that, they are coming home from dinner. They're in their driveway saying goodnight. These men jump out from the bushes. They tell them to get down, face down on the ground. Mr. Witt says no. And Mrs. Witt takes off running, and they shoot her 7 times, hitting her twice. She dies, and they leave without getting anything. Another couple in the Santa Monica area were robbed. They were unharmed. And then they pull up. It's supposed to be the same people, and yet, I'm just going to tell you right now, spoiler alert, all 6 youths are cleared. That's why her case is still open. They believe it's the same people that approach Barbara and Jim Kiernan, shoot them for no apparent reason in the parking lot of her acting school, and drive off. I'm not convinced that they are that connected. LAPD believes they are, and yet when they arrest these 6 youths, they end up being, like I said, cleared of the murders. They might be arrested for the robberies, but they're cleared of the murders. I don't know that I believe that. And here we are 45, almost 46 years later, and I still don't think I believe that. So an odd thing about Ethel Merman and her husband, Bob Levitt, they have 2 kids, a daughter and a son, whose names are Ethel and Bob. I don't know why.
Oh my God.
I know. Maybe it was a thing. I went to school with a girl named Donna, whose mother's name was Donna and her dad's name was Don. Really ridiculous. I used to say, what happens when I call your house? Do I ask for Donna Jr.? I don't know. What the fuck? What? I mean, I get it. It's a thing. Sometimes it's like a thing you do when you don't know better, or if you want to name your child Junior, son, typically. I guess it's okay. They need their own identity. I think they need their own name. Maybe give them your middle name or something. Give them a middle name that's your name.
I never understood that.
Yeah, Ethel and Robert are the kids of Ethel and Robert. What? I mean, I don't understand at all. So she is married to Bob Levitt. Barbara Colby is married to Bob Levitt for 6 years. And when they are separating, they say it was a very amicable separation. When they're separating, even Barbara's sister says, it's one of those things when you hear that they are separating, you can't believe it. They were such a fun, fantastic couple. They called themselves Tubby and Lulu. Bob was more into fun, and Barbara was fun, but she was more mature. And Renee, Barbara's sister, doesn't think that Bob, shared her interest in psychics and tarot and meditation and yoga and etc. And maybe that's one of those things, but you're still thinking, I can't believe they're separating because they're such a great couple. I'm not saying, I have read things online. It's like, has Bob been, vetted? I'm not saying Bob had anything to do with this. Bob was out of town. Would Bob have hired someone to kill his wife? I can't imagine why. He seems like a very sweet man, I'll tell you that. I mean, two men wrote a play called The Big Voice, God or Merman. And it's these two gay men who found each other. And they, I guess that's kind of an interesting, thing to say. It's like, there's a very big voice coming your way. Is it God or is it Ethel Merman? And when you're a gay man, it could be one of either, right? It could be either one.
Okay.
So part of a letter that Bob Levitt wrote to the authors of the play, when he saw it in San Francisco, he said, "The Big Voice, God or Merman, is clearly an informing, affirming delight for a gay audience, but it's also for anyone open-hearted and straight too. Within the weave of its wonderful stories, we get to see the unique and human precious qualities of two gay men, artful, courageous, and honest. And through you, we can better understand and celebrate why Ethel Merman and Judy Garland adored gay men, and that's a wonderful thing. Thank you for the wonderful show." And that was a letter he wrote. And he gave the authors of the play permission to reprint his letter to them, which was a private letter, and a picture that was taken after the play. He typically Bob Levitt doesn't like his pictures online. He doesn't want to be in the spotlight of Ethel Merman's son. He doesn't want to be in the spotlight of the widow of Barbara Colby, but he gave them permission to post the picture. And he looks like a very sweet, happy man. So I have no idea why he would want her to die. I mean, in such a terrible, terrible way. I mean, they had this very interesting, life. They lived for a while in the Dakota in New York, the building where John Lennon and Yoko Ono lived and where his life, was ending. To me, it's like their lives were just beginning, but, things happen. By all reports, it was a loving mutual split. Like one didn't want it more than the other. It was just they had maybe grown apart. And so, things happen. And it's just a terrible thing that your spouse is murdered when you're separated, because absolutely, suspicion's going to fall on you. But it doesn't mean that he was involved in anything. I mean, the people that loved her, that spoke of her, I mean, this is such a great story. Liv Ullmann mentions her in her memoir, her life story called Changing. And she said, "I received a prize that year for Best Actress from the New York critics for Ibsen's A Doll House. Barbara lent me a dress, and it smelled like incense. She doesn't drink. She only eats vegetables. She meditates for long periods of time and takes life and her place in it very seriously." That was a statement I thought was so beautiful. And Liv Ullmann is such a fascinating actor. Everyone loved her, and she was so unique and different. I mean, the thing that's a little bit crushing is that she really believed in reincarnation and the evolution of the soul, and she believed everything happened for a reason. I hate the fact that that's how she died at such a young age. I don't think that it's karma, that something, bad had to happen, but maybe she, was able to move on to another plane. I mean, I think it's so incredibly beautiful that at her funeral, everyone was instructed to wear white. She was cremated. Some of the ashes were, thrown into the ocean. Now, this is pretty interesting. When the ashes were put in the ocean, they formed the shape of a body.
Oh, really?
And then they went into the ocean, and her sister said it just felt very final. It's I think she was such an amazing creature. One of those people, one of those people that's just special. And sometimes they don't get to stay here as long as the rest of us, maybe because they have already evolved and it's their time to move on. I just wish it had been something different, like that she had gone to sleep and never woke up. But, I don't like the way that her life ended. No one does, obviously. But so she had filmed 3 episodes of Phyllis, and sweet Cloris Leachman even filmed a tribute talking about her being on the show and her untimely passing, and said, as some of you know, shortly before we filmed tonight's episode, Barbara Colby, who played the part of Julie, was tragically killed. She was a superb actress and one of the most joyful and giving people I've ever known. We could have written out the character of Julie, but this would not have fooled you, and more importantly, it would not have fooled us. So beginning next week, the part of Julie will be played by another actress. It is not easy to replace Barbara Colby as an actress, and it is impossible to replace her as a person. So I'm going to say this, and I think it's shitty. And I guess you're in a tight spot. You do what you have to do, right? And she is a fantastic actress, but they replaced her with Liz Torres. Same character name, character of Julie, Phyllis's boss. And Liz Torres is a great actress, but she's not Barbara Colby. She's a very different human being.
Yeah, it's weird. That's weird that they didn't just write out the character.
I'm sure on hindsight, it's stuff that you wish you had done differently. But, at the time, I guess it's like, okay, well, we'll just keep going. And it makes sense that what producer Mark found as far as the show being canceled in 2 years, and it wasn't because it was a bad show. It probably just wasn't a great show. And being, canceled because of these kind of tragedies, it's not like we haven't heard that before. That's absolutely happened. And maybe Barbara Colby was just too interesting or unique to replace. And I bet they would have done something different nowadays. They probably would have addressed, I know it was a sitcom, but people have died in the production of sitcoms, and they address it. They make the character have something that happens. It wouldn't hopefully has been as terrible as what happened to Barbara. And I will just tell you, I bet she's at peace. She seems like the kind of person that would be like, well, this is how it goes. This is what happened. And this is, I'm sorry I had to leave you all, and it was my time and I'm moving on. She's probably doing great works wherever she is. But I am shocked that her murder is still unsolved, as well as Mrs. Witt, as well as James Kiernan. I don't understand how these 6 youths in a yellow van, it couldn't have just been robberies, because...
Wait, were they exonerated of the murder of the lady who they shot in the back as she was running away?
Yep. Cleared of any charges of murder.
Okay.
Don't understand. Don't get it. And I understand that a lot of our listeners were not even alive then. And the chances of you being in Santa Monica, in Venice, around anything that happened then are pretty small. But I can tell you that Barbara's sister Renee says it beautifully when she said, I just have to believe that karma that Barbara believed in, that the people who did this may not be in trouble for her murder, but are rotting in prison for some other crime. And I understand that, Renee. And if that is something that helps you to accept what happened, I understand that. But it's not enough for me. I don't want them to be in prison for a robbery or something else. I want them to be in prison for taking her life, for taking James Kiernan's life, for taking Mrs. Witt's life. Lives that didn't need to be, taken ever, but for this sort of random spree killing? Are there 6 people who get together who decide we're just going to start killing people? James Kiernan said, no, they didn't ask for our wallets. We weren't robbed. They just shot us. They just pulled up and shot us. I mean, these are the things, when you talk about Richard Ramirez, these are the things I don't understand. He, compelled by a brain disorder, or however you want to look at it, or just being born into evil. There's, stories of him seeing his uncle, who was a Vietnam vet, murder his aunt in front of him. Apparently this uncle was very twisted and showed him pictures of dead bodies from Vietnam. And that, can affect someone, absolutely. Does it turn you into someone who turns around and does things like this? Or does it turn you into someone like Virginia Braden, who becomes a private investigator who wants to give a voice to people whose cases may not be heard? We all make choices, right? We all make choices in our lives. But who makes the decision to kill randomly innocent people who are creating art, who are bringing joy to the world? And if you have time to look up any of Barbara Colby's resume on IMDb, she had a great career. In her short time, she did so much, not just stage, but screen. She did wonderful guest starring roles on Medical Center and Gunsmoke. And I mean, she was a beautiful gift to the acting world, who I'm not going to understand why she had to go away so quickly and in such a bad way, but it's not mine to understand. But if you have any idea, if you've heard anything, if you know anything about these terrible senseless murders, please call the Los Angeles Police Department at 1-800-222-TIPS. That's 1-800-222-8477. And more cowbell.
If you'd like to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/justthetipster.